What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we're going to go on a little bit of a rant. But if you're new to the podcast, we have full-length interview conversations. We have rants, like I'm going to do today, discussing some hot topics and calling out some BS in the industry or just in the game or in life in general, right? And then we have mental minutes, those quick mental game hacks to help elevate your performance as a player or coach. I mean, deep dive educational explorations into those small little intricacies to help you elevate you to get in the zone, right? Whatever that zone might be, whether that's getting in the zone as a pitcher, as a hitter, or as a coach, you have a specific niche or zone that you're really, really good at, or maybe something that you want to learn more about. That's what this is for. So please hit me up with questions, topics, guest suggestions, anything that you guys would like to hear more about, dive a little bit more into, or hear me rant about, right? And I think one of my previous episodes, I mentioned if you guys see some stuff on social media or things like that that you maybe want to have a rant about, hey, send that too. I'm totally for it. Um, but yeah, if you hear this, you know someone who particularly might need to hear this, please share it. I know this one in particular for this episode is going to be specifically for the zone of parents being supportive versus having, enabling or helicopter parenting. And I think this is obviously more coming in from the youth sports side, right? But obviously, there's different parenting styles and things like that. And I personally don't have any kids as of right now, as I'm recording this podcast. I do not. But again, I'm not trying to tell you what to do as a parent or what not to do. I'm just kind of being a little bit more matter of fact, knowing what worked for me and what I've seen work for other athletes that have had parents maybe that did toe that line a little bit and they knew how to get out of it, or some of them that really didn't. And hopefully, hopefully they figure it out later on. But really, the supportive parent is just allowing the kids to experience failure and success. But you're just kind of more of a guide. And I would like to think that I do that as well in my remote training. Is I'm not going to give them definitive things of yes or no's what to do all the time. I'm going to ask more questions, let them fail, let them figure some things out on their own, right? But the helicopter parent is constantly intervening. They're always in, they're always having to say something in their lesson or always saying something in the game, right? Just hovering over them. This is one story, and again, no joke. I'm not going to name any names, but it was a younger kid came in for training, and the dad literally was giving him cues as he was doing a full-on walkthrough lesson with myself. I'm like, dude, you're paying me, but if you want to take on the lesson, feel free. I said that a little bit more lightly, but it's being to the point where you're micromanaging every aspect of what your kid's trying to do and yelling at them. Like, again, you got to let them fail. You got to let them figure things out for themselves, because it just becomes very, very hard for the athlete to kind of overcome, maybe even later in life, right? But going back to that supportive parent, right? Giving them a little bit more independence does teach them resilience. It does help improve their self-confidence so they know that they can do things on their own, right? Without having to have a parent or someone else be with them all the time, right? They got to learn how to do things and fail. And, you know, part of failing is also learning what not to do. And sometimes you don't need to show them how to do that, right? Like, for example, when I was younger, I had burned hands from a stovetop. I put them right up on top when I was like 3 or 4 and burned my hands. And I realized real quick, hey, I probably shouldn't put my hands on a stove, right? So it's little things like that. And again, kind of getting off into the weeds here, but you got to help them build genuine self-esteem, small incremental challenges, right? Don't give them something where they're going to be completely, just dumbfounded over. But I think that's the biggest thing that's lacking in a lot of today's world is learning how to problem solve, learning how to deal with adversity, or taking ownership of maybe they did do a failure or, they messed up and not having someone else take the blame or try to help them out of it, right? Versus on the flip side, that helicopter parent, right? They're trying to make all the decisions for them. They're protecting them from failure, putting them in a little bubble. right? And they don't have much resilience. They lack independence or even any critical thinking skills because, oh, my mom will do it, or oh, my dad will do it, right? But you could also create a lot of pressure and suck out a lot of enjoyment out of the game, which could also lead to burnout and a lot of other things for that. But I wanted to share a video of a current big leaguer's dad, former big leaguer, Matt Holliday, one of my favorites back in the day. But I wanted to go ahead and play that video for you here real quick.
Like I'll throw to you, I'll hit you ground balls, I'll do whatever, but it's got to be your idea, and I'm not going to force you to be a baseball player. I want you to pursue your passions. I mean, obviously, it's great that they love baseball and I love baseball, and our passions match up, and it makes it more fun to be a dad. But I've always said that it has to be their passion, and they have to love to practice and whatever that is. And same with my daughter and my younger son. I want them to pursue what they're passionate about, and I want them to do what they love and what they like to practice. And so I've never really had to force them to practice, and I've always just encouraged them with this is what it's going to take, and we'll see how bad you want it. You know, if you say you want to play in the major leagues, your actions have to back up your words, and I can show you that. And they've had plenty of examples, you know, getting a chance to go with me to the field to see guys like you guys in the clubhouse and your work ethic. So it's been very beneficial, I think, for them to grow up seeing what it takes to be a pro athlete. But you know, it's on them to put in the work. Always told them.
Right. So couldn't have said it better, where he was just saying, hey, like, they still have to put in the work. They're the ones that are being initiating what they want to do, what they want to practice, right? He's not forcing anything on them. It's all about what he's trying to get them to learn is, can they actually do a lot of this stuff on their own? Are they self-motivated to get a lot of this in, right? Get that extra set of ground balls or, you know, whatever it might be. But if they're not willing to put in that work, then there's no point in the parent coming in and basically trying to force them how to do that, right? And you got to learn how to build confidence within that. And sometimes you do have to push them as a parent, I'm sure, right? Or even just being a peer, being a coach. I have to kind of nudge them and be like, hey, come on, let's go. Let's do this, right? Because kids will be kids. They're going to take the path of least resistance with a lot of things, right? If you're an athlete listening to this, right? You know it. You know, sometimes you don't always go all out and you need someone to kind of kick you in the butt a little bit, right? So there's a time and place for that. However, you don't want to be that sole driving force of like, hey, we got to do practice. We got to do this. We got to play here. We got to do this. We got to do this. If they're not interested or even willing to do some of those things on their own or ask you to help them, I think, you know, someone might be, lack of better words, just vicariously living through their child. I said it, you know, but it's something that everybody has to kind of realize and come to grips with. But learning how to balance those, right? And really at the end of the day, you just want to help foster growth, helping them be present and be around, but not controlling, right? Let the kid take the lead because it's his journey, it's his process, right? And maybe you just offer some constructive feedback if they're open for it, right? Every time I got into a car, my dad was like, hey, so how do you think you did? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. Maybe that's not the time to talk about it. Maybe it's at the next practice, or give it 24 hours and let it just kind of mull over. And then you kind of revisit that after all the emotions and everything are gone, right? But you got to think of more of the long term, right? How are they going to learn from those failures or those mistakes without someone immediately intervening, right? And have a little bit more open communication with that is helpful. But there's a time and place on when you need to know how to jump in at them or not, right? And I'm going back to this portion of instilling confidence versus false hope. And, you know, us in my generation, we were told, hey, be anything that you guys want to be, do whatever you want to do, right? Like, the world is your oyster. All you got to do is believe in yourself and do all this, right? But there's certain aspect where, hey, like reality kind of hits you in the face sometimes. So yes, you want to build confidence and help, with their self-talk and get them to believe in themselves. But there is certain things too where they're like, hey, there's some false hope here. Like, I'm a junior in high school. I've never played for my high school team. And hey, buddy, you can go be a Major League Baseball player, no problem. Like, obviously, that's way off kilter here and into that false hope side of things. So it's, again, trying to give extreme examples. Um, but another video I wanted to show you guys was with Greg Olson, and he was being interviewed on another podcast, which I'll reference here, but wanted you guys to listen to this as well.
For parents watching this, between everything your kid does is great and building that confidence and building that self-worth, which is so valuable, especially in today's day and age, but like false hope, false confidence, not being realistic.
It's a really difficult balance. And I think the key is I knew that my parents believed in the idea that whatever I put my mind to, if I worked at it, then I would be the best that I could be at that thing. When I would say, hey, I want to go take batting practice at the field, my dad was ready and available for me to go take that batting practice. And what was often celebrated was not necessarily the successes in the game, while those were celebrated. What was celebrated was, hey, we went out and worked every day.
Celebrate the work.
Celebrate the work, right? Because that's what you can control.
No doubt.
They would never tell me to put any work in, but they would really celebrate it when I would put in extra work.
Yeah, love it. So if anything, right, like we all know that sports, athletics, baseball in general, for most of you guys that are listening to this, right, it's going to instill a level of work ethic that you can't get anywhere else. And I think if you celebrate that as a parent, we're like, hey, you're putting in the work, you're doing all these things. Maybe sometimes it's not always the right work, but that's something that you guys can always constructively bring up and be like, hey, you've been doing T work for every single day when you come home, but I've noticed that your swing is different on the T work than it is in the game, right? Like, there's, again, a place and time, but you do need to help encourage them to be like, look, hey, yeah, build that work ethic. Keep doing the things that you need to do to be the best that you can possibly be, right? And in general, I think no athlete's gonna hate that their parents are hyping them up or telling them, hey, like, good job and putting in the work and practicing, training, doing all the stuff that you want to do, right? And again, I know parents are investing a lot of money in this, and I've had talks with this as well, where they're, giving money to us as coaches, and they're like, hey, we want to make sure that he's at least doing the work. If we're paying for this service, we want to make sure that he's doing what we're paying for. And I totally get it. But at the same time, if the kid is not willing to put in the work, right? If it's just not happening whatsoever, like if there's inconsistencies, maybe sometimes that's just a time management thing that you got to work out, or knowing how to prioritize certain tasks throughout the day. That's really, really normal. And I don't think that's like, hey, your kid's not interested in the game or training anymore. That's a whole nother thing. But if he just goes a whole month or 2 months without even looking at the program, coming in touch, hey, I'm the one reaching out and being like, look, we got to probably figure something out here. Either I'm canceling you and you're no longer working with me, or we got to have a heart-to-heart conversation and find out why you're not putting in the work, right? Was it something else that may be overlapping? Are you doing more stuff outside of maybe the program that I'm sending you? Maybe you're with your team, you guys are getting run into the ground, right? Like, things like that happen. And again, it's life, but you gotta be willing to obsess over being good. And I'm speaking directly to the athletes here, right? If you're not obsessing over how good you can be and how much better you're getting at all the little small things day to day, then I don't know if you're going to see much success within your life. If you can't, and again, obsession may not be the right word here, but all the greats that are good at what they do, great at what they do, really, they have a singular obsessive focus on beating on their craft every single day, getting better at just 1 millisecond, 1% better than they were yesterday. And I think everyone should do that, right? And if you're not even doing that in what you're trying to do, like me being a podcaster or me coaching other athletes, if I'm not trying to better myself, then I'm being a hypocrite for trying to help these guys and be the best that they can possibly be. right? This is something that you're going to embody for the rest of your life. Same thing for you parents that were listening to this too, right? It's, can you be a better parent? Can you be a better listener? Sometimes you just got to flip the lens and be like, hey, how does my son or daughter see me during this situation versus my perspective on how I think I feel or how everyone else around me feels for, Jimmy striking out or whatever their thoughts might be. At the end of the day, they honestly don't care. They're not going to say anything unless it's just completely blown out of the water and it's you yelling at your kid in the dugout, right? Like that's probably going to be talked about at the dinner table, but you got to have a little bit more of a perspective shift, excuse me, right? That's where you need to sometimes just reflect a little bit more and be like, hey, am I doing everything that I can? I'm giving him all the resources, I'm giving him all the opportunity to do this, making sure that he has, everything that he possibly could. But there's again a fine line there of completely just giving him everything and helping him learn how to work for it. And I'm glad that my parents helped me learn how to work for the things that I wanted. I still had to go out and wash cars, or if I wanted a new video game, or if I wanted the next cool new bat or the new glove, I had to work. I had to put in some work for it. I wasn't given everything. Sometimes they meet me halfway with the cost because the price is just too astronomical for me to raise at a certain point in time. But, if these are things that I wanted to do, I had to also put in work for it. And, I think that's a great, great way to instill, not even as parents, but as coaches too, and be like, hey, if you come in, you do the work, you get rewarded. If you come in and you're hitting PRs and stuff like that, it's not always about the success that you're having on the field, but hey, celebrate having them come out and hey, dude, you came in, knocked out 5 great sessions this week. Congrats, man. Like here's, or hey, you've gone a whole month coming in consistently. Here's a t-shirt. Something as small as that can go a long way to help kind of build their confidence and gain that momentum to continue to keep building on what they're already doing. But that's it for this rant. I know it's a rather long one and it was bouncing around from parents to athletes, right? But for those of you listening, I hope you guys got something out of this. If you know someone who needs to hear it, please share it with them and stay in the zone.